Hello, this is Adam with DreamMade Productions. This video is made possible by the very kind donations of viewers like you. Thank you. If you are in a position to help this channel improve quality and grow, please visit my Patreon page at www.patreon.com/DreamMadeProductions, linked below.
It is the 31st century, and mankind is once again at war. The battlefields of the future are dominated by huge robotic war machines known as battle mechs.
Quick note here. Sorry for the lack of artwork in this episode. Finding technical artwork for BattleTech can be challenging enough, let alone finding things for obscure items that we'll be discussing today. I tried to create a few things, but I'm no artist. I struggle with stick figures. I slapped a few things in, but try to consider this more of a podcast episode. I still hope you enjoy. Hello, and welcome back to The Arsenal, a series where we look at the weapons, equipment, and technology of the BattleTech universe. Today, we cover something I've been looking forward to for a long time. Being honest here, I had intended for this episode to be a little later, but recent events have me stressful, and I figured, screw it, I want to talk about something really fun. So today, we look at some examples of my absolute favorite systems in all of BattleTech. Those of the Secession War's experimental technology. In particular, the dead ends and failures. There is an old saying, adversity breeds innovation. In my opinion, this is only half true. Adversity alone breeds nothing. My slightly altered version of the saying is, adversity and creativity breed innovation. When a creative mind is confronted with a serious problem, success or failure, the results are often fascinating and inspiring. The Secession Wars are often painted as this black time in history, when the WMD-fueled destruction unleashed by the House Lords bombed mankind back to the Stone Age, or even worse in some instances. This overgeneralization is understandable, especially when compared to the prosperity and technological wonder of the Star League's golden age. It says a lot that even the clans, with all their advanced technology, in some cases far superior to that of the Star League, still keeps an eye out for caches of lost tech. Even the clans don't have a complete picture of everything. Remember, the vast data banks loaded up and taken on Exodus Road were just what was left over after a decade of fighting on a scale unseen before or since. Regardless, my point is that the Secession Wars very much counts as adversity, and weapons development doesn't stop just because someone happens to drop a nuke here and there. Even as knowledge was literally burned up, creative individuals started to develop replacements for what was being lost. Some of these we have already looked at. Others I very much look forward to introducing you to, but either way, let's look at a few of the innovations that came out of the Secession Wars and led up to the technological renaissance just prior to the clan's invasion. While not really an innovation, the Battle Mech Supercharger nevertheless gained in popularity. We already talked about the Supercharger, but very briefly, this handy device forced a fusion engine to take reactants at a faster rate, boosting its overall rating and providing an increase in running speed. To achieve this, safety measures built into virtually all fusion engines must be overridden, with all the risks that follow. As you can imagine, this, let's go with, voids the manufacturer's warranty. Still, the simplicity of the supercharger saw its reintroduction during the Secession Wars, even if said reintroduction was mostly off the books when it came to quartermasters. Another innovation we have looked at is the hatchet. We can thank the Lyrans for this little piece of wonder. Wasting tonnage and space arming a battle mech with a melee weapon would have seemed insane during the days of the Star League. But when advanced systems are lost, well, a crude piece of armored plate, cut, sharpened, customized for a mech's hands, could be devastating in the skirmishes of the Secession Wars. The benefits are boundless. No heat generation, no ammunition consideration, ample supply of, let's go with replacement parts, and maintenance simplicity that cannot be matched. The hatchet was so successful, it has spawned off a dozen or more specifically designed melee weapons now found all over the Inner Sphere and clan forces. To close out topics already covered, let's remember briefly triple strength myomer technology. To make a very long story short, the current version of the system was not the first. Early in its design process, a kind of improved myomer that greatly increased a mech's physical strength was created. However, early designs had a fatal flaw. The myomer became unstable when exposed to a chemical compound. The Federated Suns used this defect to trick their Capellan enemies into adopting the technology early, and then flooding the battlefield with an aerosol version of the compound. This led to any breach in the armor, causing the myomer to, well, fail in an often explosive way. To turn the tables, the Capellans would further develop the technology, and with a new formula that we now know as TSM was born. To achieve the result, Capellan's formula was heat dependent, but it was far more flexible. Original TSM was simply always active, greatly increasing the mech's physical strength, but still limited to its normal movement. Modern TSM has to be heated to activate the same result, but is far more flexible once brought up to temperature, allowing a mech to move faster. The old TSM is still in production, and use is limited to industrial mechs where exposure to the weaponized chemical is remote. Let's take a look at technology that offered endless promise, but failed just as spectacularly. The Federated Commonwealth's Listen-Kill missiles. LK missiles are a great example of a good idea that should have worked failing. Anyone and everyone knows that the guidance systems on LRMs and SRMs can be a bit limited. Streak, Narc, Artemis, Tag, technology can do a lot to improve these limitations, but none of these were available at the time. A mix of engineers and scientists devised a way of improving missile guidance. Now, younger mech warriors may not be aware of this, but anyone who has been around an older fusion engine when it starts up will remember that whining sound. As the engine heats up, there is this loud whining noise that slowly goes away as the engine fully warms up. This is caused by the protium heating into the plasma that powers the reactor. In reality, that sound doesn't really go away. It just pitch shifts out of the range of human hearing. Fedcom designers identified that quirk in fusion design as a weakness that could be exploited. They slapped additional acoustic sensors in LRM and SRM guidance systems. The result were missiles that could more easily home in on their target. These changes were small, but fairly complex, adding significant cost to the missiles. But based on testing and, well, black operations, the results were very noticeable. The Lyrans in particular ramped up production with aim to replace their full arsenal of SRM and LRMs in time for the upcoming war with the Draconis Combine. Their first official use was in the defense of Lions, when early production prototypes were supplied to the Kells Hounds, who shared them with the Crescent Hawks. However, their added costs taxed even the infamous wealth of the Lyrans to re-equip not only their own regular forces, but additionally their trusted mercenary partners, as well as the AFFS. Too few were available to be deployed in 3039 to turn the tide of the war. Worse, once the Caridans figured out what was going on, they were able to find a fast fix. A few circuit boards and some extra shielding was enough to noise cancel and muffle the sound. These plug-in boards were easy to manufacture and quickly spread through all DC forces, followed very shortly after throughout the inner sphere. As FedCom tried to overcome this pennies on the sea bill solution, more bad news hit. Later designs of Star League XL engines more or less fixed the wine problem. The final nail in the LK missile coffin were the clans. Clan engines, XL and otherwise, are of course more efficient and stealthier than even the Star League designs. Only the first generation of clan-designed engines had even a hint of the weakness LK missiles relied on. Needless to say, production of listen-kill missiles ended by 3051, and the whole mess was quickly forgotten. Oddly enough, LK missiles are still around. So many were produced, and their use so limited, second-line Lyran units still have stockpiles of the things. These days, most quartermasters not even knowing exactly what they are. And now I get to talk about perhaps my favorite weapon of all time, the binary laser cannon. This particular piece of kit is absolutely fascinating in a train derailment kind of way. The binary laser cannon, or Blazer, shows exactly how desperate yet creative Secession Wars technicians were. By the late 2700s, the stories of more powerful lasers were still widely told. While we now understand Star League ER and pulse lasers, at the time these seemed almost mystical weapons whose reputations were no doubt exaggerated. In an effort to improve laser damage, but lacking the advanced technology used by the Star League, the Lyrans did the next best thing. They took two large laser cores, fused them together, then programmed them to fire simultaneously through the same focusing lens. Now, on the surface, this sounds like a horrible idea, with a wide array of things that could go horribly and/or hilariously wrong. You would not be wrong, but it was not as bad as you think. While the Lyrans had working examples of binary laser cannons in 2801, it was the Free Worlds League who fielded them first in combat. Feedback was instant and clear. This thing sucks. The binary laser cannon is fairly large, given that it takes two large laser cores to power the thing. At 9 tons and 4 criticals, it is both larger and heavier than the PPC, its closest competitor. The dual large laser cores pull the same power requirement as they would if not linked, so the thing generates an eye-popping 16 heat. And keep in mind, at the time, single heat sinks were more or less your only option. The additional weight, space, and heat actually does pay some dividends. The laser is capable of dealing 12 damage, slightly beating out the PPC. Sadly, the boost in power does not translate into better damage. The gamma ray containment beam still fails after 15, giving the 5, 10, 15 range brackets of its large laser cousin. Almost all consider this weapon a failure. And it certainly was. However, it's important to give credit to those designers. By 2800, basic operating knowledge of these systems was beginning to fade. Yet here we have creative individuals taking what they did understand and combining it in innovative ways, creating a subpar but absolutely functional weapon system in the dark age of mech technology. What's more, blazers are still in limited production even now. Sure, the market is hilariously small, but there are fans of the binary laser. Some for its ability to remove a mech's head in a single shot, still others trying to make this thing work as intended. While others took the basic idea of a multi-core laser and put their own spin on it. We'll come back to that and them at the appropriate time. Another piece of technology I wanted to briefly look at from the time were the FedCom double freezer heat sinks. Now, there had been other efforts to resurrect the Starleak double heat sink. Those and related projects will be getting their own video, but what I'm referring to here are the heat sinks that became somewhat widely available in the 1-year war. By this time, understanding of double heat sink technology had advanced to the point that limited production runs were possible and underway. Still, the technology was new, and people don't always like new things. Plus, there was no way entire mech forces could be outfitted with the new heat sinks. So, FedCom designers made a compromise. The freezer heat sink had special fittings and adapters that allowed it to function in tandem with single heat sink systems. At the time, they had not quite figured out how to convert freezer heat sinks to work within a mech's engine. This limited their placement to external vents, and running a mech engine without any internal heat sinks is not only wasteful but also very dangerous. So the freezer heat sinks of the era had special converters fitted that allowed the double heat sinks to cool a mech along with single heat sinks. This had several benefits. First, a malfunctioning heat sink could not overly affect a mech's performance. At the very least, the time-tested single heat sinks located in the mech's engine would still function, even if the freezer heat sinks failed. Second, it allowed already existing mechs to easily swap out some of their external single heat sinks in favor of the freezers, giving them a small but very noticeable boost in heat management. Anyone who has ever piloted a trusty old mech design will instantly realize 2 or 3 double heat sinks can solve a lot of problems, especially when your opponents have no such advantage. When the Starleak double heatsink began production, the freezer heatsinks quickly fell out of favor. The classic Starleak design was more reliable, cheaper, and could easily be fitted into a fusion engine. It just lacked the converters needed to make it work with single heatsinks. These and other systems only scratched the surface of what was being tried during the dark age of the Secession Wars. For, in hindsight, what are obvious reasons, some of these attempts failed. Others would go on in one form or another to become successful products. Either way, the next time someone tells you about the Secession Wars Dark Age, while not exactly wrong, you can correctly point out that despite the dark, there were little specks of light, sparks of inspiration, clever if somewhat misguided attempts to push mankind forward. What do you think of these oddball systems? If there is a piece of equipment or technology you would like covered, let me know below. And as always, I hope you enjoy the battle reps that are to come. Hello, this is Adam with Dream Made Productions. Thank you for watching my content. It really means a lot that you have given me the chance to entertain you. If you would like to support the channel, please visit my Patreon at patreon.com/DreamMadeProductions, linked below. Also below is a link for PayPal, or links if you would like to send crypto, if that's more your thing. Please Please know any amount that you give will be cherished and used to upgrade equipment and improve the channel. You can also help the channel by subscribing, turning on notifications, liking, commenting, and sharing my channel with anyone you think might be interested. Thank you again for watching, and I hope you enjoy the battle reps that are to come.